Arc 5, Chapter 77, A Nameless Night. Receiving the jolting impact, his body got out of the dagger's trajectory, not being in a position to sharpen his sword stance, and even if he did accept it with his broken nightblade, he would not be able to evade the severe wound. That was the conclusion that anyone would realize at a glance. Henceforth, Julius was able to notice that he was being shielded. However, it was again a different subject whether he should express relief or gratitude for it.
Ricardo!
Shit! He got me! Ugh.
With an anguishing voice, Ricardo, who had pushed Julius aside, narrowed his eyes. When he called out that name, at that time, a spout of blood clouded Julius's vision. The blood was spouting from him, the rough, bulky right arm of Ricardo, having lost everything from his elbow. It was a gash exposing the soft cross-section. The arm was covered in bestial hair, gave rise to a sound, and fell onto the cobblestone. The big hatchet it was gripping to made a dull sound and rolled to the ground.
How did such...
This ain't the time for saying that, Julius. Raise your head and look towards...
At Julius, who was breathing heavily, Ricardo slammed a loud yell. However, that was abruptly obstructed by the attack of the dagger he suffered on his abdomen, and his nose was smashed and broken by the solid knee's direct hit, throwing him aback. As Ricardo flopped into the air, with his limbs stretched out, Gluttony sneered.
Aren't you going to completely say it, Sue?
The form of Alphard, who was shouting to his delight, and Ricardo, who had collapsed. Seeing the figures of the two choices came up into Julius's mind. Which one of the two should he give precedence to? A seemingly instantaneous gap had been produced there, and the appetite of Gluttony would never overlook that gap.
To look away in the middle of a meal? You really don't have manners, Nisama.
You bastard!
Like a spring-loaded doll, Alphard left trickily. At the phantasmagoric movement, Julius's reaction got faintly delayed. The outstretched palm and the broken knight's sword entangled, and the feeling of his chest being traced by the palm. With his slash being dodged, what followed immediately afterwards was an inexplicable sense of loss.
Thank you for the treat, Sue.
At the end of that voice, for some reason, his consciousness distanced further and further, and...
Though it is pathetic, in the midst of the battle against Gluttony, my name was stolen. Perhaps that is what this current situation is.
Based on what Emilia had said, the truth had been brought to light, expressing a cynical smile on his face due to the truth being forgotten by his acquaintances. Julius shrugged his shoulders.
Name got eaten? Is that what you mean? But...
Eating the memories and names from people was that blasphemer, the Sin-Archbishop of Gluttony. The threat of getting the name eaten and having all connections cut off, Subaru was well aware of its fearsomeness. However, looking at Julius now, who seemed to be in a healthy shape, he could not help but feel his understanding was frivolous.
his victimization is like Rem or Crush-san.
Having her memories eaten and completely forgetting her old former self was Crush. Having her name eaten and vanishing from the memories of people with not a single exception and continuing to be in a deep slumber in that state was Rem. Victims of gluttony, the two young girls were sufferers Subaru was well acquainted with. However, coming here, Julius had been trapped in a state different from those two. His own memories not having been lost, nor did he lose consciousness. However, from the memories of his surroundings, his existence has disappeared.
Really? Does nobody remember? If you attempt from one side...
I have already met with Anastasia-sama and Ricardo. For some reason, they treated me like an unacquainted person. I have endured that experience. Being unable to thank the one who shielded you is displeasing, is it not?
Julius reflectively killed his sentiments and replied, but his smile, which faintly had too much energy being put into it, or the tone of his words naturally, were different for Subaru to behold. No matter how strong Julius's consciousness may be as a knight, there was no way he could bear such mental stress with ease. With the ruin of relationships he had compiled, the fear and despair of losing the days he had lived personally, this was the sense of loss Subaru had tasted, to the point of it being painful, when he had arrived into this different world at first.
Beatrice.
What Subaru wants to say is understandable, in fact. But, unfortunately, even Betty does not remember that man, I suppose. Betty is already outside the Forbidden Library, in fact.
Sympathizing with his intentions at a single call, Beatrice, with a difficult face, horizontally rotated her neck. At Beatrice's point, the confirmation Subaru had picked up. That was, whether she remembered Julius or not. As Emilia did not remember, naturally, there was no way Beatrice would remember. That was how it was supposed to be. There was a possibility that Beatrice was an exception. For some reason, Beatrice had...
Even though you remembered Rem.
It can be said as many times as you'd like, but rather, that case itself should be thought as the exception, I suppose. And now, it should be thought that it has been proven with the man in front, in fact.
In the end, that is the inference regarding your memories, huh?
It had been some time ago. Some time ago. Beatrice, in the Forbidden Library, had once referred to Rem after her name had been eaten by Gluttony. Subaru had questioned that after she had formed her contract, after the Forbidden Library had been lost. This was one conclusion they had reached after their exchange.
When isolated from the outside inside the Forbidden Library, Bayako does not get affected by what is outside of the room. That's why the moment Rem's name was eaten, no effect was taken. That's what I thought, isn't it? That's why, once exited from the room, special treatment would not be given.
That tone. Seems like there is a problem with Betty leaving the Forbidden Library, I suppose.
Nothing like that. I'm a mammoth happy to be able to walk under the rays of the sun with you.
In fact.
And within that short back and forth lay the truth. And in fact, Beatrice exhibited no particularity regarding Julius. Beatrice's inference was surely that the barriers to her memory served their purpose only for the Forbidden Library. Rather, in this case, the problem here was not Beatrice's distinctiveness.
But why does Subaru remember Julius-san? Just like that time with Rem-san.
That's it.
The question that would draw upon everyone was finally spoken by Emilia. The sole person in the entire world who remembered Rem, whose name had been eaten. Subaru. Forgotten even across the preservation of memories of Ram, who was her elder twin sister. However, Emilia and the others did not make any reference. That must also be because looking at Subaru's connect to Rem with such devotion, they could not randomly speak regarding the memories, or make any implicitly believing rash remarks. But not just that. The ability to refute Subaru's memories could only be done by nothing else but having definitive proof, which not a single one of them possessed. However, it was different this time. In this case, the concerned party who, aside from Subaru, also remembered. In brief, Julius, who had been forgotten since his very beginning by the world, retained consciousness. Naturally, the reconciliation of mutual recognition and the reason for Subaru being treated as the exception of the authority of Gluttony gives rise to doubts.
Does Subaru have any idea? No holding secrets, okay?
I don't intend to hide anything at all, but I think I sort of do. I won't say that.
That isn't a secret?
If you can't confirm it, don't declare it. I don't think that's a secret keeping.
Conversing with Emilia, Subaru investigated the possibility of him being an exception. The feeling that had uprisen in the very beginning was the interference of the witch factor sleeping inside of Subaru. The authority of Gluttony eating memories or names was the power of the witch factor, then it was conceivable, due to a certain cause. It may not apply upon Subaru, just like Unseen Hand. Perhaps Subaru could return by death through the power of the Witch of Envy. With the power of that witch invoked, it may have cancelled the efforts of the authority of Gluttony. And there were the remaining feeling of the exceptionality of Beatrice's Forbidden Library. That was because Subaru belonged to a different world. Subaru was a human whose origin was from a different world, and not an existence belonging to this world. Not being an existence of this world, he cannot fall under the effect of the authority which interfered with the concepts of this world. How is this hypothesis?
However, if it's the latter, then the way to confirm it is easy. Julius just had to meet with Al.
The sole person in this world who was under the same circumstances as Subaru was Al. Regarding the exception of the authority, if the latter hypothesis happened to be correct, Al must also be remembering Rem and Julius. Above all, the Al of this world and Rem had no acquaintanceship with each other. Henceforth, it cannot be confirmed.
There's no way he can say that even this time, huh?
Subaru?
It's regarding Emilia-tan's question, but there's something I want to confirm before answering that. Julius, you'll have to come with me.
At Subaru's voice, who cut short the chase, Emilia made a somewhat discontent expression. He was keeping secrets, would be what he perhaps thought as well, but this was a measure necessary for attestation. Above all, in the case of the hypothesis correctness was proven, what both Subaru and Al held in common, the part of both of them being trippers from a different world was ambiguous. But the ones whose hometown lay between the great waterfall did not fall under the effect of the authorities. That absurd explanation was the only option left.
Don't tell me you won't refuse, will you? It's regards you, after all.
I must state that I have no choice. It seems, under the present circumstance, you are rather knowledgeable regarding the condition inflicted upon me. I shall follow you.
Why do you have such a delicately large attitude, you?
Whether the calmness had been restored through the conversation till now, the attitude of the elegant-appearing Julius, with his jaw pulled in, returned. Regardless of appearances, the situation that had popped up was tough on his mind and heart. Not charming at all was another way to put it.
Suddenly getting absorbed in appearing admirable and increasing problems for the party in contact, huh? Anyway, let's get back to the shelters. I think now is a suitable time for all the people concerned to assemble too. That's it! What about Ricardo? He had taken part in the suppression together with you. He's fine, right?
He did get injured whilst shielding me, but it should not have an effect on his life. He is currently being properly diagnosed by Fiatis.
Is that so? Then that's okay, I guess.
At Julius's reply, Subaru's innermost thoughts were half relieved and half reflection. To dissect, the relief of Ricardo's safety and the reaction of Julius's insensitivity, who had directly inquired from the ones he had fought alongside with. And at Subaru, whose voice diminished, Julius sighed.
I do not expect you to show friendly concern. If you conduct yourself the way you always do, it would be more comfortable for myself after being in such perplex because of the environment. Well then, let us return to the shelters.
Saying that, Julius friendly patted Subaru's shoulder.
Though it is not something too pleasant, there is no choice but to leave my introduction to you. The fruitless effort of your display in the hall of the royal selection, it would help if you would withdraw that at this occasion.
Don't go about digging up people's regretful history. Shit, worrying for you was a mistake.
Pushing away the hand on his shoulder, Subaru turned towards Julius, stepping towards the shelter. He would not misunderstand by thinking that Julius's reply just now were his true feelings. Moderating Subaru's feelings of guilt, he had simply given his reply in need of a smart response. He knew that, as he knew that.
Am I an idiot? No, I definitely am an idiot.
Why must he now uphold an attitude of giving salvation to Julius's heart? He, who had lost all others above all, must be feeling the helpless anxiety of solitude. How could he mistake on his words of judgment? His own insensitivity was terribly irritating, and Julius was almost as irritating as well. In a situation where anxiety was natural, acting as normal was a strength of his as well. The strength was surely something which Subaru could never attain, despite his desire. Until Julius were to be left as is, Subaru would certainly harbor his own sense of responsibility. Looking at the back of Subaru, who was heading towards the shelter, after having angered him, the edges of Julius's lips curved into a slight smile. It was a powerless smile, one which he could never let Subaru see, who had his back turned towards him.
That face, do you intend not to show it to Subaru?
In that dim gap in his heart, a silver bell's chimes pounced in between. Turning back, there lay a line of sight of amethyst eyes towards Julius. At that gaze, wearing gloom, Julius concealed his smile and shook his neck horizontally.
Meager disposition, futile resistance of the defeated, that's what it is. Please, do not point it out.
Defeated, you say?
Perhaps we, among those who headed to capture the control towers, were the only ones who missed. Fully realizing our great insufficiency, I now live in disgrace, and have been left alone in a prohibited state, completely defeated.
With a stubborn attitude, Julius strongly brought attention to their defeat. At his attitude, Emilia's eyes wavered heartbreakingly. Emilia, at this moment, might have been able to find the powerlessness of Julius's heart.
I'm sorry.
However, Emilia's utterness was different from what Julius had been intending for. At Julius, who raised his face, Emilia embraced her slender shoulders.
The truth is, I don't know what I should say to you right now. I'm sure I must have known you, but I still cannot remember. And I can't be reliable like Subaru.
In Subaru's case, he should not be referred to much. He is the one that is the exception. Is that not the case?
Even still, I know you were being hurt, That's why I cannot do anything but apologize, and in regards to Subaru, thank you.
The fact that she had thanked for Subaru was unsettling. Emilia sighed at Julius, who furrowed his eyebrows.
Julius-san's current face, if Subaru saw it, he would definitely be pained more. That's why, thank you for hiding it. I'm really sorry.
Please stop, Emilia-sama. It is not something to be thanked for, and furthermore, you are making too much out of me. There is no need for such consideration.
It was true. Julius, subjected to Emilia's gaze, filled with innate kindness, could feel the inappropriate comfort. With such admirable consciousness, it was not as if he had confirmed Subaru's innermost thoughts. It was something much simpler, a more uninteresting reason.
I do not wish him, Subaru, to pity me. That is all there is to it.
Up front, drawing closer, gazing at Subaru's stature, Julius declared. Pulling Beatrice's sleeve, who was close to him, with a difficult expression was Subaru. At such a figure of Subaru, Julius was unable to display his own powerlessness. Why those thoughts? That reason was...
Just now, I feel like I heard Julius-san's true thoughts for the first time.
Emilia, continuing steps, commented about Julius's words. Julius thoughtlessly rounded his eyes, and Emilia raised a single finger.
It may not be too much help, but I will also talk with everyone and try to convince them. That's why, along with Subaru, trust us as well. Let's go.
Yes. Also, Emilia-sama.
What?
Calling a halt to Emilia as she turned back, Julius elegantly bowed. Though it may not be in her memories, it remained inside him, as if carved deeply, that courteous etiquette as both a knight and a noble.
Being called Julius-san by Emilia-sama gives rise to a helpless sense of unpleasantness. Please, refer to me as Julius, that way of reference.
I used to refer to you like that. Right, I understand. Julius.
With a finger on her lips, Emilia consented. After that, Emilia drowned in thought, and shortly glanced at Julius, then proceeded to face towards the empty sky and...
Can I ask something too?
What might it be?
Right next to you, minor spirits. No, maybe quasi-spirits? Those children are lying about in seeming uneasiness. Did you know that?
Yes, I am aware, because they are buds that, being close to me, shall eventually bloom.
Julius closed his eyes at what Emilia had pointed out. Right beside him, when he closed his eyes, he knew there were the quasi-spirits, wielding the power of 6 colors flying about. However, those buds had no knowledge of why they were there. That was why, for them...
My current self's words will not reach them, just like the words from my master or my comrades